business. There's no doubt in my mind he's benefited it, but in more ways than enough, he has not benefited the business, and that's why I say he has to go. If there ever was a proverbial finger pointed at one of the worst promoters of all time, it's got to be pointed at Triple H, not Vince McMahon or John Laurinaitis, because John Laurinaitis is just doing what the McMahons tell him to do. Vince McMahon is one of the most ingenious promoters in the wrestling business, purchasing the territories in World Championship Wrestling and Extreme Championship Wrestling back in the 90s was a smart move for Vince McMahon. When he was purchasing talents like Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan from the AWA, they were smart moves. Purchasing the territories, I can never give him enough credit for doing that. So he's definitely a genius, probably the smartest man in the wrestling business without a doubt. And, you know, the comparison between Triple H and Vince McMahon, that's something else that gets on my fucking nerves. The fact that they're trying to make Triple H into the next Vince McMahon, which they will never have happen. Triple H will never be Vince McMahon. Only in his dreams will he ever be the closest thing to Vince McMahon. Because in honest-to-God truth, if you're able to get down to the bone-hard truth of this, Triple H is not going to be Vince McMahon. Nobody else is ever going to be Vince McMahon. At 69 years of age, he's still just as smart as he was back when he was 50, and he started becoming an in-ring performer. Triple H is an in-ring performer. That's what he was good at. In 1995, he asked Vince McMahon for an opportunity. Vince gave him that opportunity. And I don't think in 1995 he wanted to take over the wrestling business in the way that he did. And to say that he's the next Vince McMahon, that is a ludicrous thought or assumption by wrestling fans out there, or radio show hosts or columnists who write these columns all the time for the internet websites like ProWrestling.net, ProWrestling.com, PW Insider, PW Torch, whatever the case may be. That is a ludicrous comparison. You know, you compare different wrestlers of the past all the time, like Brian Pillman and Dean Ambrose, and how Harley Race and Triple H resemble each other. But to compare promoters like Triple H and Vince McMahon, I mean, give me a break. And to point out the fact that wrestling fans don't have any idea what goes on behind the closed doors and in terms of the politics, that is absolutely ridiculous. To take a shot at me on Monday Night Raw 3 weeks before WrestleMania is reason enough to give me a fucking anxiety attack. Triple H needs to go away, and he needs to stay away. And until he goes away and they bring back general managers to WWE in shows like Monday Night Raw and now Thursday Night SmackDown, the business is never going to get better. And I don't know what it is about WWE creative, but they are keeping with the idea of Triple H making no disqualification matches, hardcore matches, as he did back in the early thousands. Remember the McMahon-Helmsley era and how disastrous that was? That was a clusterfuck, if there ever was a clusterfuck, only because Vince McMahon wanted to take some time off from the business. He books this match between himself and Triple H for Armageddon in '99, and then we see the birth of the McMahon-Helmsley era, and it's almost like we're seeing and witnessing the rebirth of the McMahon-Helmsley era in 2013 up until now. It's ridiculous how we're seeing old storylines rehatched because they've done virtually everything in the book, and there's nothing else left for them to do. It gets on my fucking nerves, and it's time to change things up in the WWE. If there ever was a time to change with the times, as Vince McMahon has said so many times over the years, for so many wrestling documentaries like The Greatest Wrestling Managers of the 1980s, now is the time to change things up, because I think that people are just as sick of Triple H being a promoter as they were sick of seeing him as champion back from 1999 up until at least 2005. Everybody was irritated over the idea of Triple H being a 10-time, an 11-time, a 12-time, a 13-time champion, saying he was going to stop at 15 out of respect out of Ric Flair, which obviously he would have done, but he never got to that accolade before becoming a promoter. And now Triple H puts himself in the ring once every 6 months. It's ridiculous. You know, back years ago, you would never think that someone like Daniel Bryan would beat Triple H. Triple H would beat him in about 5 minutes. And now Triple H wrestles every 6 months. He's not wrestling full-time. So again, that's another reason why he should go. But the biggest reason why he should go, in my opinion, not only because he gives me anxiety, it's because Triple H takes shots at people on the internet who he knows nothing about politics with professional wrestling. And I'm going to tell you something. I got to pick up for wrestling fans when Triple H takes shots at you guys, because wrestling fans out there know more about the wrestling business than they are ever given fucking credit for. It's time for Triple H to take his opinions along with his nose and stick them so far up his ass that he'll never get them back, because wrestling fans out there know more about this business than they are ever given credit for. And that's what pisses everybody from inside the business off so much, is the fact that everybody knows more about the wrestling business than they're ever given credit for. And I will say that If there's one fact that I always keep saying and shoving down our throats all the time about the wrestling business, it's the fact that you guys know more than you're ever given credit for. You guys who sit behind the keyboards, you guys who talk throughout social media are the ones who are never listened to, who should be listened to more, and who should be given more credit for some of the stuff that you guys know. Because some of you out there are some of the smartest people in the wrestling business, and if ever your ideas were ever took, if we ever saw the day when wrestling started listening to its fans, the ratings would shoot through the roof. We'd get matches like Sting versus Brock Lesnar. We'd see champions we've never seen before, and we'd see some of the more creative storylines in the wrestling business. That's why when you go on .com, they say they don't accept storyline ideas from wrestling fans because they have their own creative team. But I think that the wrestling fans are the smartest people when it comes to a creative team, and they are the ones who should replace WWE Creative. Make no wonder our newsfeed on our Facebook page is always posting articles about how they're firing members of the creative team now. That's great. They're actually firing members of the creative team now because the creative team is in a very proverbial corner right now, an impenetrable corner that they can't get themselves out of. And I hope that they get a better creative team than what they had back in 2004, 2005 when they had people like Freddie Prinze Jr. on WWE Creative. I mean, give me a fucking break. You know, it's obvious enough that Freddie Prinze Jr. had something to do with WWE for the Scooby-Doo promotion, of course, and things like that and other things in the past. But I mean, WWE Creative would have been far much better off without Freddie Prinze Jr., which is why I'm thrilled they're not having people like Freddie Prinze Jr. on the creative team now. If ever a blame or a proverbial finger was pointed at anyone for why WWE is the way it is, it's WWE Creative. It's bad enough we have a bad creative team, let alone Triple H throwing ideas the way of Creative and Stephanie running all these love and romantic storylines we've seen for the better part of the last decade. These ideas of these wrestlers and divas being in love, of course, they're coming from Stephanie, which is absolutely pathetic. She's trying to be a bodybuilder or a wrestler now, which is also really pathetic. I mean, how many times has Stephanie wrestled in the last decade? Maybe 3 times, including one match against her father, which is really sick and really perverted. I don't know how they got that one off 6 days before Stephanie and Triple H's real-life wedding, which was supposed to have been televised, and it probably would have been televised if up to Vince McMahon. That's why I say Vince McMahon is a genius, because he wanted to do stuff that people like Triple H would never even think or attempt to do. And that's why I say people like Triple H will never be someone like Vince McMahon. It's time for him to get that idea out of his head. And we need a newer champion, by the way. Hello, WWE Creative. Are you listening to this? We need a new champion. We would have a better champion no matter who it was, as long as it wasn't Seth Rollins. I don't care who the WWE champion is 3 or 4 months from now, as long as it's not Seth Rollins, because any champion will be better than the champion we have now. You can put that strap on a wrestling fan who's been a fan his entire life, who's never wrestled one match in his existence, and he would be a better champion than Seth Rollins. If you want to endorse a member of the Shield, endorse fucking Dean Ambrose. Let's go Dean. Let's give Dean the opportunity to be WWE World Heavyweight Champion, because at least he's entertaining, unlike Seth Rollins, who allows he can out-rap Wiz Khalifa. Nobody in their fucking mind can out-rap Wiz Khalifa. What is WWE Creative thinking when it comes to running a promo? Who writes this shit? How can he out-rap Wiz Khalifa? I've never heard Seth Rollins out-rap anybody in his life, and I don't think Seth Rollins has ever done anything entertaining in his life. So let's go Dean. Let's go Roman. Let's get the Shield members who deserve pushes going with something creatively. Let's bring back Brock Lesnar. Let's bring back Sting. What has happened in the fallout of WrestleMania 31 that's interesting us? King Barrett is a ridiculous storyline for a wrestler that actually has a tremendous amount of talent, but that just goes to show how WWE ruined perfectly good talents. I mean, they did it with Chris Morendensky so many times in the past. He was referenced by CM Punk for being an overutilized wrestler, who was someone, an underutilized wrestler who could have went the distance in WWE. So many wrestlers had so much talent, but were never given the benefit of the doubt. Chris Morendensky, Wade Barrett, ruining characters all the time, again pointing the finger at WWE Creative. WWE has gone wrong so many times down the proverbial road over the last 10 years. And wrestling of 2005, I know, is so dead. And that's why I think that Jamie Noble and Joey Mercury need to take their ball and go elsewhere. They are so 2005, and they are so overrated in 2015. What a difference 10 years makes, guys. It's time for Jamie Noble and Joey Mercury to go home. John Morrison, Alberto Del Rio have gone elsewhere out of Mexican wrestling, which is actually benefiting them, unlike WWE could have done so much with John Morrison and someone like Alberto Del Rio. It's really heartbreaking when you see how John Morrison was never utilized to his fullest potential in WWE, nor Chris Morandensky, Chris Masters. Really, WWE firing great talents and replacing them with wrestlers who don't have a fucking idea how to entertain or how to get themselves over. I mean, there are exceptionally few good wrestlers like Bray Wyatt and Daniel Bryan, but what happened to Daniel Bryan went down with 2 major injuries in less than 1 year. Again, because he was overutilized when someone else could have been overutilized, but they weren't. They were underutilized, and one didn't have their fullest potential recognized. The same thing can be said for the Divas. What happened to AJ's incredible wave of momentum? It ceased before it ever got started. 295 days as WWE Divas champion, and then they ruined AJ Lee. Really sick of that, how WWE ruined Divas who have so much potential, hoping the NXT women's division is going to come through and break through to the other side eventually, because you have so many incredible talents on the WWE Divas division. 295 days as WWE Divas champion was an incredible wave of momentum to be riding on. That was killed before something was ever gotten started with that. And now Stephanie is trying to put herself over as the most dominant diva and McMahon in the McMahon family and the wrestling business, because the only reason is they don't have another McMahon to carry the torch. Shane wants nothing to do with his fucking family. Shane wants nothing to do with the WWE. So that's why they're putting so much emphasis on Stephanie. And I don't blame Shane McMahon for walking in on WWE. Yeah, Shane, you did the right thing. You're doing something else with your life. You have potential, and you know you have potential. So you shouldn't be held accountable for walking away from WWE. You knew they were in a disastrous clusterfuck, and you got out of it before things got worse and your name was attached to anything that WWE had done. And a word of advice to the McMahons and the children of Stephanie and Triple H: don't be like your parents in the future. If you cannot be like your parents, then you're actually going to go somewhere in the wrestling business or with your life. Stay out of the wrestling business and don't be like your mother and father, and you'll actually have something to look forward to in life. But if you turn out to be anything like your mother or father, like Stephanie or Triple H, then there's not much I can say for you, because I guess the apple doesn't far from the proverbial tree when you talk about, people who ruin things for everybody, and definitely the authority have contributed to ruining things for us more than they ever have benefiting us. Yes, they do a great deal of stuff for when it comes to charities like Make-A-Wish and different awareness things like bullying and the WrestleMania rating challenge. Sure, I mean, they benefit us a lot, but more times than enough, they're letting us down. That's why we're reading about the ratings being so low. That's why the wrestling business is getting on the nerves of so many fans, and why so many fans watch Monday Night Raw now with the mute button on all the time. I don't blame you for watching wrestling with the mute button on, because the show now only consists of about 45 minutes of actual wrestling, and the commentary puts you to sleep. I mean, John Bradshaw Layfield was a good commentator starting out, but now he's more annoying than ever. He's overpowering